Pisces, and we're at the end of Pisces. That's why the Christians talk about the end times we're living in, the last days we're living in. The last days of what? The last days of Pisces. It didn't take me very long to figure out that so much of what is going on, humans are not being told. We are not being told the real truth. And I'm going to, a couple of things in particular I want you to know, and I want you to remember. Nothing in this world, nothing works the way you think it does. There's always more to the story. You hear about some marriage breaking up, and the husband did this, the wife did that, and it's very obvious what happened. No, it's not obvious what happened. There's a lot more to the story you don't know. You don't know her background, her past. You don't know his past. You don't know what was going on in the family. You have no idea. So nothing is simple. This is why you have courts. So I found that nothing in this world operates the way you think it does. Banks do not loan money. Governments are not empowered to protect you. Police department is not there to serve you. Institutions of higher learning, colleges and educational institutes are not there to educate you. The entire superstructure of civilization in the Western world is a combination of brilliantly put together and planned, well-planned schemes to direct the minds of the people in such a way as to serve their masters. And I've known that for a long time. And one of the biggest tools in the hands of the masters who run this world is Hollywood. Hollywood is an incredible story. I've said this, and maybe many hearing me now have heard me say this, but I'll say it again, that the white man's establishment comes from Europe. And in northern, southern, well, all four, northeast, south, and western Europe, even at the time of the Roman Empire and before, that whole section of Europe that we call the center for the white man's presence on the earth was quite literally ruled over, ancient Europe was ruled over by a priesthood called the Druids. And the Druids were they were the ministers, the priests, the judges, the lawyers, they were the religious leaders. So there was a priesthood that dominated Europe. It still does. Europe is still a Druidic country. And America is a Druidic country. And unless you understand the Druidic system, then you're never going to figure out what's going on in America and England. But one of the most important symbols in the Druid system was a magic wand, like Merlin, the magician with the magic wand. And also the orchestra leaders and conductors always have a magic wand. And you have better play to the tune of the master. He directs you to play, and he directs you to stop with the magic wand. So you're dancing to his music, okay? Magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. And Hollywood is a Druidic establishment. And the symbols, the words, the terms, the stories are designed. Think about it. Think about how Hollywood does what they do. I'm not saying they're evil, I'm just explaining how Hollywood works. You have, first of all, a story. So somebody has to write the story. All right, so now you've got a story. Now you have to give it to a screenwriter who's going to adapt that story, excuse me, adapt that story into a screenplay. Because you can't just tell the story, you have to design it to be a movie. Now once you do that, then you're going to have the actors, very important actors, because you're going to need people to act the part. And so it doesn't mean that they actually have human feelings. No, they're being paid to act like they care, to act like they love someone too. It's an act. And so you're paying actors to act out the part that the screenwriters have written, And you want to make sure the actors do it just right. So you have to have a director, and he's going to direct everything you say and do the way he wants it said. Then you have, of course, the producer, and he's also subjected to the executive producer who's producing the money. And so all of this is a whole system of putting together a system of a story that tells you a story. It causes you to think in terms of what you just saw, so that people go out from the movie and think in their minds, this is the way you normally would react to a situation, the way that the guy in the movie did. And so that's why today, in the Western civilization, especially in the West, our ability to work with each other and live together as humans is so screwed up. Because we've been watching so much television and so many movies and so much silliness coming out of Hollywood, so much violence and sex and drugs and all the rest of it, that people have no idea in the world how to live anymore. They've lost their humanity.
Okay, so you're saying that in many ways Hollywood movies and television are actually sort of doing behavior modification.
Precisely.
To see the symbols, the words, the terms. Hollywood does three things. They tell you what your masters have done in the past, what they're doing now, and what they're getting ready to do. That's Hollywood, Druidic system of entertainment. You need to wake up and understand what's going on here. The Caesars of Rome proclaimed that there were two kinds of laws. There are only two things on the earth. There's water and land. Therefore, it would follow that there's only two kinds of law on the earth. The law of the land and the law of the sea, the law of water. We've all heard the term the law of the land, but most people do not realize the reason why we call it the law of the land is because it's differentiating between the law of the sea. There's a second law. So that's why when you walk into a court, you will see a fence with a gate. And the people sitting out here, you call the law of the land, because the people live on the land. But once you walk through those gates, when your name is called and you walk through the gates, those gates are referred to in court as a water gate. A water gate is when you go through the canal, like the Panama Canal, they have water gates. And when the water gate opens, the water rises, so that they close the gate and the next gate opens and it rises again. And so when you go into a court, your name is called, and if you put your hand on the gate, there's a piece of wood on the top of the gate. So when your name is called, you put your hand on the gate and you open the gate. The gate is a water gate, and there's a piece of wood on the top of the gate. It's called a bar, the B-A-R, and you're not licensed to pass the bar. The attorney is licensed to pass the bar, not you. So therefore, when you walk past the gate, the bar, you are now in hot water, and someone's going to have to bail you out. And so that's why all commerce and all life has to do with maritime admiralty, or the law of water. And as I said, there are two kinds of law, the law of the land and the law of the sea. When we talk about the sea, the oceans, we always refer to the oceans, and one of the ancient words for the ocean or for the sea was mer, M-E-R, which gives us our word mermaid. And so the sea, or mer, was always enchanting, because the waves come in, they go out, they come in and go out, and it's hypnotic. And so the waves coming in and going out, it's beautiful, it's relaxing, it's metaphysical, and so it's very, what we call, enchanting. And so the law of the sea became known as the law of the merchant. And so the law of the merchant, or merchant, is the law of the sea, or the law of water. And water, in law, water represents money. It is the liquid asset, the cash flow. And once you understand that all activity of humans on the earth, crime, doesn't matter what kind of activity, whatever the activity you're involved in, is under the law of the sea. It's under maritime admiralty law. And you need to understand what the word maritime law means. It means the law of the sea. Let me give you an example about how the law of the sea works. All ships, rocket ship, sailing ship, item has to have its own certificate of manifest. You have to have how much the car weigh, what color was it, does it have air conditioning, is it 4-door or 2-door? So it has to have its own certificate of manifest. Why? Because it came in on a ship and she delivered the product on the water, on the high seas. So this is why when you were born, your mother's water broke. And you came out as a maritime admiralty product because you came out of water. Therefore, you have to have a birth certificate, a certificate of manifest from the ship who sits in the harbor in her birth. So you have to have a birth certificate. Why? And who has jurisdiction over the birth certificate is the dock, because that's where the ship is sitting. It's sitting at the dock. So the dock has to sign your birth certificate. Why? Because you are a maritime admiralty product. The banks will buy your body. It's a story of the way banks work, the way maritime admiralty commerce works. You need to understand that you are a product. This is why if you are looking for a job, you're not looking for employment. You go to a human resource center because you are nothing more than a resource. You're a human resource. Just like iron and copper and oil and silver, and you're a resource. When you drive through downtown Los Angeles, you will see gang graffiti on the walls. Most people driving by and seeing gang graffiti just shake their head because it's just incredible the way that young people destroy property by spray painting graffiti on walls. But young people who understand that graffiti is a symbol, it means something. And if you don't understand the symbolism, you need to stay out of that neighborhood. So the same thing is happening all around the world. If you understand the flags and the symbols on flags, or the coats of arms, or the harlotry, or the corporate logos that companies and corporations use, these are all symbols and words and terms that are being used. Unless and until you understand that the whole world is a business. The entire earth is a business. Now, the only way that people are going to learn anything is by fellow communication. People communicating with other people, learning from other people, and passing that knowledge on. That's the way the human race educates itself. That's the way we have grown. That's why people like myself are referred to as researchers. The word is R-E, researchers. Why? It's because I'm not doing anything new. Myself and others like me who are referred to as writers, authors, and researchers are merely researching, meaning other people have done the searching, other people have dug out the facts, and many centuries ago, maybe many thousands of years ago. And so this is what happens in a court. If you're going to make a decision in a court, you have to do some research. Go back into the records and see what the courts before you have said. See what the judges have said 30 years ago about this particular subject. So what you're doing is you're researching. Do it again. And so today, the way young people need to understand is that there's knowledge out there that you haven't been given, and you need to research that knowledge. And the way it's done is very simply, you don't confront authority. Just go to the library, especially today with the technology that exists on the web. All you have to do is go on the web and start researching words and terms and symbols and how government works. Where do religions come from? Where do the religious ideas that we espouse and the things that we talk about in Christianity and Judaism and Islam, where do these ideas even come from? How did these great religious movements get started? And where does the money come from? It's very interesting when you start looking at the oil companies. For many years, oil companies have been financing churches, Protestant and Catholic churches, especially Protestant churches, have been getting a lot of money from oil corporations for their missionary movements. A lot of the big churches have huge missionary movements financed by the oil companies. There was a large book, a very thick book, written many years ago that you might be able to find in the library, called Thy Will Be Done. Go read the book, Thy Will Be Done.
We're going to cover word spells, how a post-Mesopotamian language has had us under the old abracadabra trick. Hast thou fallen for the eldest trick in the scroll? How do I even begin? Is it by telling you about how we've been unwittingly cast into the mold of ancient spells, of our modern spelling? Cast just like a mold, or perhaps like a net, while caught. Cast just like a mold, or perhaps like a net, while caught like fish in the net of spells and spelling that have been cast, thus sentencing us to life sentences and the curses of cursive, which are just terms, like serving a prison term. So we've been sentenced to the wards of these words, which can be deadly as swords if misunderstood. Or perhaps you missed my understanding of my terms, or the sibyls of my syllables, or even the ancient rites of modern writing. We languish in our languid language in anguish ever since the ancient times of the English Angus, and the phony phonetic phonics of the ancient Phoenician Phoenix. You think English is easy? Sometimes I think English should be committed to an asylum for the verbally insane. In what language do people recite at a play and play at a recital? Ship by truck and send cargo by ship, have noses that run and feet that smell. How can a slim chance and a fat chance be the same, while a wise man and a wise guy are opposites? You have to marvel at the unique lunacy, or the lunar sea, of language in which your house burns up as it burns down, in which you fill in a form by filling it out, and in which an alarm goes off by going on. English was created by the ancient Phoenician phonics of the phony Phoenician Phoenix, and it reflects the creativity and cunning genius of the human race, in which of course isn't a race at all unless you're just another rat caught in the daily maze of the rat race of this human race against one another. We draw money from our banks, which are the edges of a river, which flows in currents to the sea, which is why it's called currency, because our cash flows like pyroclastic ash flows to the sea, which is why we can trace back the roots of all modern trade to the ancient Phoenician trade roots, and why our mundane weekdays seem to keep us in a perpetually weak days, until we are so weakened that we barely make it to the weekend. So each day we actually awake routinely in the morning, or is it the Monday morning ritual conversely conversing a morning at a wake for the dead? And thus the Bible speaks that the dead shall walk the earth, or so it appears that they already are, without even knowing it, just by the strange language of which they know not the true origins of what their words mean in etymology. And thus the significance of the signs and sins in signification of their signatures on these dead legal fictions, like IDs and bills, because our citizenship begins when we board the citizen ship, which sails the high seas carrying seamen, and it all begins when the male ship docks in the female slot or slip, also known as its berth, and unloads its cargo or seamen, which sail up the waters of the canal. So she gets pregnant and now carries the precious cargo, and will now give birth to the new citizen that must now register to board that citizen ship, and repeat the cycle all over again, until the citizens catch on to the ancient spells of the phony phonetic Phoenicians, their tools of commerce and piracy of the high seas, and the human commodity through the use of their made-up languid language, which gives us our modern English. She gets pregnant and now carries the precious cargo, and will now give birth to the new citizen that must now register to board that citizen ship, and repeat the cycle all over again, until the citizens catch on to the ancient spells of the phony phonetic Phoenicians, their tools of commerce and piracy of the high seas, and the human commodity through the use of their made-up language, which gives us our modern English. Check out the links in the video below. I've included more links and more information about this topic